Hey guys. So, over the past few months, I have been investing myself in a book I've just finished recently, and I just wanted to discuss what that book is and why I've been so engaged with the content, and hopefully relay my good thoughts where anyone watch me can have their either have their interest piqued and want to read it themselves, or they may have already read it and just wanted to stick around for engagement purposes. Either way, that's perfectly fine. So, what's this book I'm going to talk about, you ask? Well, for someone that's into epic novels like Tolkien's Hobbit or Lord of the Rings trilogy, or even Herbert's Dune series, this was a book that embroidered itself in that style writing wise. And this was bestowed to be my family member. And I'll admit, when they gave it to me, I kind of set a high bar on how well this novel is going to play out because I'm just really into novels involving epic themes. But once I finished it, needless to say, I wasn't disappointed. That novel I'm going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, is Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne.
When the gods fought, it was a battle so savage they destroyed themselves, leaving nothing but their bones and the broken land of Ygritte in their wake. Now, as whispers of war echo over the fjords and across the plains, fate follows in the footsteps of three warriors, a huntress on a perilous quest, a noblewoman pursuing battle fame, and a thrall seeking retribution among the mercenaries known as the Bloodsworn. All three will change the course of the world as it once more falls under the shadow of the gods. The Shadow of the Gods is a Norse-inspired epic novel written by John Gwynne that's a part of a three-book series called the Bloodsworn Trilogy. This book covers the beginning portions of that trilogy where themes concerning loss, belonging, family, fame, vengeance, and even trauma are often explored. Oh yeah, and the violence. We certainly can't underestimate the violence in this novel because, boy, there is a lot of it. This book's writing style follows a first person POV concerning three people: Orca, a huntress of mysterious past who peacefully resides in a remote setting with her family until a major event happens that puts her on an odyssey she can never turn back from. Varg, a runaway slave, also known as a thrall in the book, who happens to encounter an odd band of fighters known as the Bloodsworn, where they go on many adventures in exchange for information on a long lost blood relative. And Elvar, an ambitious mercenary fighting within a warband known as the Battlegrim, where she hopes to rise to the ranks and make a name for herself as well as her gang. While the book mostly focuses these characters' own separate journeys, the overall story will intertwine their perspectives, culminating into an awe-striking and unforgettable climax. I feel like this is a good segue to go ahead and talk about the main characters, as I feel like Gwen did a great job making them feel complex and relatable, where each of the stories are interesting to observe, and was never reluctant on jumping from one POV to the next, as I found them all engaging. While it can feel a little befuddling to jump from each character's perspective chapter to chapter, and I'll admit a little pace breaking, I never felt bored following along with their odysseys, and was quick to recognize certain plot points through the help of other side characters from their current environments. They all have good stories to tell, especially Orca's solo heroic saga quest that she undergoes through most of the book, which contradicts Varg and Elvar's narratives concerning camaraderie. Each of their histories are both complicated and enigmatic, but provide appropriate impetuses of their underlying motives that slowly unfold as the story moves along. If I had to choose one character I most connect to out of the three, it would probably be Varg, not because I'm a guy, but because I relate to his timid and awkward nature, especially when it comes to companionship, albeit having a totally different history than him. Another major highlight in this book, other than its characters, is probably the most central aspect when it comes to writing epic fantasy. This trait is what makes these sort of novels a conventional distinguishment from other book genres. What I'm referring to, dear viewers, is the setting. Reminiscent to Tolkien's transformative fantasy world-building structure, Gwyn also takes inspiration with that approach by providing a detailed description of the settlements, habitats, weather conditions, as well as the unique flora and fauna that occupy them, and an intricately drawn map in the beginning as a reference point to the world we're experiencing. The careful research and thought work put into the setting of the book, which is clearly inspired by various mythological tales and Norse sagas Gwyn had read like Beowulf and Edda, is all finely crafted to bring a world like Vigrid into light. Do be warned though, this book uses a lot of Nordic terms like Brynja and Drengus, so if you're not interested in pursuing through or perusing through a book that has some heavy reliance on Old Nordic language, then I'm sad to say this book isn't for you. Luckily, Gwyn is able to provide his own Nordic glossary at the end in order to lessen confusion for readers not familiar with Old Norse dialect, so at least he's considerate about that. So, I've been talking at length about the book's synopsis, as well as its characters and setting, so, of course, we can't just simply omit the elephant in the room to what the primary reason a lot of readers pick up a book in the first place, and that is its story. Since this is the book Gwyn has written and published for his Bloodsworn trilogy, readers can expect a slow-paced fantasy story where all the central and side characters are introduced, as well as the establishment of the environments the story will take place in. It'll take a while for the story to pick up, but once it does, you'll understand why this book deserves to have its name imprinted in the epic fantasy genre. Being no stranger to writing other fantasy books like the Faithful and the Fallen trilogy, Gwyn has certainly mastered the structure and pacing of fantasy storytelling as well as the plot elements involved. The adventures each of the characters go on are fun to experience, and the book also contains some interesting, well-timed plot twists thrown into the mix, as well as an amazing cliffhanger of an ending that'll leave readers eagerly anticipating the next book in the lineup. With a finely crafted story, detailed and imaginative world, as well as diverse and well-written cast of characters, one should never feel bored when intaking all these highlighted elements that integrate into a cohesive epic that holds well in its own. Speaking of which, we certainly shouldn't forget the main highlight of this book, at least from my perspective, that teases our cardinal pleasures when we ingest an action-oriented fantasy like this novel. Yes, dear viewers, the element I'm referring to is the violence. I mentioned before that this book doesn't filter out any of the details and concern of its violence. Gwyn does not hold back when accounting all the gory details when the characters we follow set sights on grim sceneries, whether it's humans or animals hanging upside down with their overalls sticking out, or even the details of the battle encounters we experience occasionally that the characters participate in. If you're not one to handle intense violence in fantasy books, then I highly suggest you just stick to reading the Chronicles of Narnia instead. While the level of violence may be a little intense, Gwyn does impressive work on taking the gory scenery and utilizing it for context purposes, whether it's to drive the plot forward or to depend on the lore expansion within Vigrid. Oh yeah, and the action scenes are astounding. Being a Viking reenactor and historian in his spare time, Gwyn is very knowledgeable in the weaponry and battle attire the Vikings wore during their period, as well as their battle tactics when utilizing shields and spears and axes and sea axes, so on and so forth. Yet, the action sequences are descriptive enough to make them fun to read while also maintaining some level of realism when handling such arsenal the characters use during their bouts. Any fan of action fantasy can pick up this book and not be disappointed by the battle scenes portrayed.
And that should cover all the components I listed off during this review. Overall, I thought this was a very entertaining novel filled with lots of action, likable characters, a creative setting, and a fun story. If you're into epic novels like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, then I cannot recommend this enough to go ahead and give this book a read. If you like this review, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe down below my video player. And if you want to see a video I did previously, then I will send a link on the upper left corner where my info card is at, or down below in the description box area. I'll also send a link there as well where I go into detail about my position as an Amazon delivery driver. If you're interested to know what that position was like, I highly recommend you go watch that video because I say some pretty insightful stuff on there. You don't want to miss that. But anywho, that's the end of my video. I thank you, dear viewers, taking the time to watch me. I hope that time was worth it. And I will see you when I see you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.